Good afternoon. We are going to call the December 3rd, 2020 Scott County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And also, before we go to item number 2, it's Deb Brazel's birthday today. I had that in my calendar. If she's watching, happy birthday. I don't know what camera. She better not be watching. She just retired. But if she is, happy birthday. Item number 2, amendment to the agenda. Are there any amendments? I don't think that there are. Otherwise, we will let them stand as distributed. How about item number 3, approve the minutes of the November 17th, 2020 County Board meeting. We've had those distributed and have a chance to take a look at those. Any changes, additions? There's only one person to look at. We are full strength. I've got one person here with me. Anything online? Any changes on those minutes?
Second.
I missed the first one. We must have had a motion. I was talking a lot. Did we have a motion? Did we have an original motion? Yes, I see a thumbs up. I heard the second. We are doing everything roll call, as is the custom this year. So JJ, welcome JJ. Take us away.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Weckman-Brecky. Aye. Commissioner Wolf.
Aye.
Commissioner Beer.
Aye.
Commissioner Beard.
I'm saying aye. We got reversed there, but we both said
All
aye.
right. Yes, we did get a reverse.
We'll,
Okay.
we'll get this new.
I'll enunciate. Commissioner Ulrich.
Aye.
All right. Minutes do pass. Item number 4, favorite time of mine and others, a recognition of interested citizens. This is a great opportunity, folks, to come and talk about whatever they may want to talk to the board about that is not on the agenda. I see someone approaching. She's masked, so we're not 100% sure who she is, but I'm going to look out the window just to see if anyone else is coming. But no, it's our county administrator, Leslie Vermillion. Good afternoon to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to read to you a proclamation that Governor Walz has set for Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. And it has to do with setting a county, city, tribal, and state health and human services worker day. And it is in recognition of the outstanding work that these folks do. As you know, Lori, Danny, and I have been meeting with all of our staff over the past month in some small groups. And when you sit and listen to the creativity, the passion, the drive that folks have in this county, and how our HHS staff have gone above and beyond to figure out creative ways to meet with their clients, from bringing lawn chairs and sitting in lawns to figuring out where they can meet within a facility, and going beyond to working with technology with their clients. It is just really something that you should all be very proud of. I know that I am. I know that Pam Selvig is. So I wanted to read this because it was, the next time obviously up would be after this. So I think it's important that we get it out there for the public. Whereas county, city, tribal, and state health and human service workers are dedicated to improving health, protecting vulnerable people, and providing outstanding public services to the people of Minnesota through the prevention efforts, administration of programs, and provision of services. And whereas county, city, tribal, and state health human service workers are responsible for the prudent expenditure of millions of dollars annually and must meet the highest standards of job performance in the program and service delivery. And whereas the nature of federal and state legislation necessitates the county, city, tribal, and state and health human service workers continually expand their knowledge, skills, and expertise related to their profession and the needs of the communities they serve. And whereas the state of Minnesota recognizes the valuable public services that county, city, tribal, and state health and human service workers perform each and every day for the health prevention and protection of Minnesota. Now therefore, I, Tim Walz, Governor of Minnesota, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, December 9th, 2020, as County, City, Tribal, and State Health and Human Services Worker Day. And I think what they have done through this pandemic, our public health, the testing, while they're still doing their other regular job, has just been phenomenal. So I think it's worth recognizing.
It is indeed, and we've got some really good folks doing that really good work. So thanks for reading that today. I'm going to just look out because we always sometimes have folks via Zoom, sometimes people still coming in, which is awesome, but I'm not seeing anybody. And JJ, there's no one online that you know of. Is there for, I don't think that there are normally.
I don't see anyone
would.
waving.
So let's just move on to item number 5. We're going to receive information on the Scott County Delivers topic, facilities asset management. I'm glad it was you and not me. I got mine out of the way earlier.
Talk with you today about asset management. Really, the purpose of this Scott County Delivers is to talk about how we are using technology to better manage assets and resources within the county, and specifically today focused on buildings, facility asset management. So that is certainly the efficient and the wise use of our assets goes directly to the cost of government. And that's why we're here to talk about this today, that our costs of government relate to how well we take care of those things that we've been entrusted with. And Brad Davis and Joe Weta and their teams are going to talk with us about that. This topic is also really aligned with the strategic plan that talks about designing and implementing business model changes. And you're going to hear a lot about the work that they've done to plan and then implement improvements into how they do their work. So we're excited to talk about that as well. We have a number of people who are going to be speaking remotely. So I'd like to do some introductions of people in the room. Then we'll ask the people who are appearing remotely to do their introductions, and then we'll get started. Can we start with you?
Sure. Jake Rusing, Scott County Library Director, here on the panel.
Brett Davis, Director of Planning and Resources Management here at the county.
Joe Weta, Infrastructure and Operations Manager at the county.
Brandon, could you introduce yourself and put your video on, please?
Sure, can you see me? Yep. Okay, good. My name is Brandon Roberts, and I'm the Program Specialist for Facilities.
Chad?
Chad Weller, and I'm maintenance worker down at facilities.
Thanks. Chris?
Chris Ross, I'm a GIS analyst.
Thank you. And Jen?
Hi, Jen Dane, Three Rivers Park District, and I'm an administrative specialist for the maintenance department.
Great. Thanks for joining us today. Okay. I think we'll get started. Brad, I wonder just if you could start out by just talking a little bit about the narrative that you put together talks about the Scott County Facilities Management Strategic Plan and kind of the 4 main elements of that. And I'm wondering if you could just sort of summarize for the board the direction that plan is taking your departments related to asset management.
You bet. Thank you, Chris. So about 5 or 6 years ago, a small group of staff started helping the facilities department look at their long-range strategic plan. What are the long-range needs for the department? What are the long-range needs for the county? And that process, we took a look at a lot of different topics. And one of the key things we looked at is we need to do a better job managing our assets and making sure that we know exactly when the life cycle of those assets occur, how long do we need to continue to maintain certain assets before it's more efficient and cost-effective to actually start replacing those assets. And so we started doing a lot of that inventory work and coming up with what we think is a much better capital replacement plan. And you see that every year as part of the CIP, you see a chapter just on building improvement plan, or what we call the BIP. And that looks at what are the needs in the county over the next several years, what are the major investments. And able to really stay on top of those investments, we needed to have some really good software to make sure that we know how often are those big assets being inspected, how long are they going to maintain, what's their warranty period, all that data. We needed a central location to really capture that data, and that led to a recommendation to invest in some new asset management software. We'll talk about Cartograph. It became Cartograph. We'll talk about that software a lot here over the next hour. Some other big items that came out of the plan was the recognition that we're going to start needing more space. And we looked at some historic space studies for the county and some different ideas. But it was really this study that said, you know what, we need to really take a serious look. It led us to hiring Wold Architects to do a space needs study that ultimately led to the decision to invest in another major building here on campus and some other buildings out in our public works area. Finally, another big aspect of the plan that we're probably just starting to get into is more of that operations plan. We want to have a really good operations plan for each building to determine what are the needs, what are the staffing needs for each of our buildings, what is going to be the staffing needs for our new building, and as we start looking at getting out of other buildings, how do we move staff around? And so that's going to be another important upcoming work for facilities. So I'd say it was those 4 areas that we really, I think, took facilities management here at the county and kind of have them think longer term in the future. What are some key things that we want to accomplish?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Chad, you had, and I'm going to invite the folks that are presenting remotely to just jump in, but occasionally I have like a specific person to direct a question to. So there's a nice write-up in the narrative, Chad, from some of the work that you did collecting the information for asset management, the asset management software. And I'm wondering, in there, it says that you have really done quite a lot of work, completed the asset management inventories for many of the buildings, and that you are still working on the regional training facility and the JAF. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what the plan is for completion of that so that that data set in Cartograph is whole.
Well, actually, I have completed the regional training facility and JAF.
Oh,
What I have left to do is the new building, basically.
okay.
So,
Can you say a little bit about that? Are the assets in the new building will be entered into Cartograph as they're installed in the new building, or what's our plan for the new building inventory?
well, right now, basically all the assets are in the building.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to go over there because the building's not completed yet.
Mm-hmm.
I can
So-
answer that question a little bit better, maybe.
Sure.
I'm working with Dustin Kruger in the facilities department. He is going to be providing me, along with Wold and KA, a list of the assets, the location of the assets, hopefully a lot of the pertinent details for each of the assets. And hopefully we'll be able to just basically dump that information straight into Cartograph and not rely so much on the work Chad has had to do in the last year. All that information will be up to date. We'll have pictures and everything. So it should be, hopefully, cross your fingers, a pretty easy process working along with Dustin and Kay especially.
Nice. Who is the best person to speak to? What are just in a short period of time, what are what's the value added that Cartograph is bringing to our organization?
This is Chris. I'd say accountability is kind of the biggest piece of it. We know the goal of this is to know everything about every asset that we have, from the time it's installed, the cost that it took to purchase it, how much time we're spending maintaining it. It's kind of an all-encompassing summary of all of our assets. So it's kind of everything, and we can point back to everything we've done and say, this is how much time and money we've spent on every one of our assets.
So getting to that true cost.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Before I turn it over to Jake, I wanted to ask something. In the narrative section on page 4, there's a section on what's working well, and there's also a section on what's not working well. And what caught my eye on this is that you folks, as you have gone forward to implement Cartograph, had some difficulty with staff buy-in or staff use of the new system. And I wonder if we could talk about that, because A few months ago, Cindy Geist led a Scott County Delivers where we talked about technology and some difficulties getting the full value out of those systems. And so I wonder if we could talk about what you learned through that process that might be helpful to other people.
I think a big piece of it was really on the training, and getting the maintenance staff used to the software. I mean, we had a previous program that did some of it, but this is obviously a little higher end level, a little more sophisticated, a lot more detail. And some of the guys that took a little bit longer to get them, used to the fact that it's going to take a little bit longer to enter data, or things may look a little different. But I think the biggest thing is just to take the time and not just dump it on them and say we got to be at this level, but just to take incremental steps to make sure we're getting all the data in there correct, all the processes in there correct. And you'll see in maybe a little later in some of the data, you'll see those spikes in some of our graphs where it'll detail those issues, but we're working diligently to get through those, and they're doing good with it.
Okay. Do you have any specific things that you're doing right now, any strategies to up staff utilization of the system?
Yeah, as far as staff, I mean, it's staff-wise, they're using it to its full potential. I think on the maybe where we're lacking a little bit still is some of the forecasting pieces, but we're really at a good point with this software implementation. One, we've made a lot of investment in new air handlers, rooftop units, roofs, like I mentioned before, the new building. So we're really at a good time where a lot of the assets are new. So now moving forward to collect this data, but in turn, we need to get the program set right to be able to do that forecasting for the future.
Sure.
We have a great facilities staff, and anyone that works in our buildings knows that our staff will just do anything to solve the problem, and often they just want to fix the problem and not necessarily think about, now I got to go back to my desk and enter some data into a software system. They're used to just, resolving the issue. And so that was part of the training. It's just as important to spend that time to put the information in. And so I know Joe had worked with staff to at least identify time in their day, whether it's morning or over the midday or near the end of the day, to just make sure that you carve out that time to do that work. And I know Brandon too then offers some weekly and monthly reports on some activities. That's a way for, I think, everyone to just kind of make sure everyone's staying true to staying on those tasks. And Brandon, do you want to talk a little bit about those reports and how staff has found any benefit from those reports?
Sure, yeah. So I try to run a weekly report just showing what everybody currently has due, and then what they have completed in the last week. One, to kind of just show accountability. Two, to show management exactly what's going on within the department. And showing the weekly data, I think, hopefully helps keep all the workers on track and motivated to stay on top of the PMs that have due dates. And then also we run a monthly report which shows a much greater scheme all the work that's being done within the whole county, breaking down work percentages, average time, all that kind of information that hopefully someone can use to make better decisions in the long run as far as, who's doing what and when.
Nice. Thank you. Well, let's take a look at some of that data. Or did you have other?
Can I just ask a question while we're on the topic of cartograph at maybe a higher level? With big software like that, it usually comes with all the bells and whistles, and then maybe you end up using 20% of the features on a regular basis, and there's 30% that you're happy they're there, you use infrequently, and then maybe 50% that nobody ever uses at all. Could somebody here ballpark what percentage of the features we're currently using? And then if there is room to grow, where would you like to see that happen?
I could probably answer that, if that's okay.
Brandon, if you can answer that for the county, and then if I can ask Jen or Brad to maybe respond to that question for Three Rivers. I think it's a great question.
Yeah, so I think maybe I would estimate it at about 50% would probably be a good bet. What we are doing is the daily work, staying on top of all of our preventative maintenance and requests. But what we aren't doing, Joe mentioned earlier, was more of the future scenario building kind of data that the system can provide once that information's in. Once we are able to perform inspections and come up with different scenarios, that will show us, as far as BIP or even CIP, what kind of assets will need to be replaced when. And that's a big part of the system that currently we're still building up. And hopefully within the next year, we'll be able to show some data for that. Technology-wise, there is some work that they're still doing with Cartograph One, which is their iPhone app. So far, it hasn't really worked so well for us, but I know talking to Cartograph, they are still investing a lot of time and money into the app. So we're hoping with that technology, it will make the guys more mobile, which will then get them out, being able to do more work and not spend so much time implementing data and data entry, which no one really wants to do, I'm sure. So as of right now, I'd probably guess around 50%, and we have a plan as far as what that next 50% should be in the next year executing and all that.
Nice, thank you. Jen, did you want to respond to that question?
I'm wondering, I also have Simon Morgan here with Three Rivers Park District, and he's on the GIS end of things, and I'm wondering if maybe Simon would chime in, I guess, and talk about the capacity of what the cartograph system has to offer, and I guess how we are using it and at what capacity, because I know he kind of oversees multiple departments, and because we have many departments that are using Cartograph, and I just kind of work with the maintenance part of it. So Simon, would you be able to help answer that?
My name is Simon Morgan. I'm the Senior Manager for GIS and Business Applications at Three Rivers Park District. We use Cartograph across multiple departments, as Jen alluded to. We're using it in our maintenance department, in our forestry and natural resources departments, in our IT department, and then also our donation and volunteer departments are using it to manage like memorial trees and memorial benches and that kind of thing. I think as last time I looked, we had 45 different asset categories in our system, and we have a list of 20 different asset categories on our to-do list to add in for 2021. We have about 125 users across all those departments, and some departments are just using it as a place to store the data about assets, other departments are using it to manage the day-to-day operations of managing those departments. So it's quite a variety of use cases in the Park District. Sadly, there was a bit of a glitch on the audio on my side, so does that answer the question, or was there more?
I think so. Thank you, Simon. All right. So Cartograph provides better information. There's some time savings. There's some accountability. There's maybe some room to grow yet. Is that a good summary of where we are with Cartograph at the moment? Yeah. Okay. Let's move into the data, and we may have some of those system level questions to come back to. Do you have a data question, Jake?
I do. We can start on page 12. Perfect. In the right spot.
Okay. Oops, let me get this out of here. I don't know if I can get it out of there without.
That's okay. So on page 12 in the why does this matter? Actually, it's a good graphic showing the total operating costs per square foot for a few of our facilities. How does that compare with industry standards? Are we comparing favorably, not favorably? How are we looking compared to others?
Yeah, I'll start the answer, and if others want to jump in. When we were preparing the strategic plan back in the about 2013, 2014, at that time, the industry standard was about $4 to $6 per square foot. And that's generally, if you kind of take the average across all 8 buildings, we're probably in that industry standard. Obviously, some buildings that we maintain are above that standard. I'd point to the JAF and the RTF, and maybe the HHW building is 2 or 3 that jump out a little bit higher than that industry standard. And I think some people on the call have some ideas of why some of those buildings cost a little bit more than our other buildings. But to answer your question, that's generally the standard. I haven't looked at any updated numbers. It's probably changed a little bit since 5-6 years ago, but I'll turn it over to Joe. Maybe Joe, you can speak to some of the fluctuations you've seen.
Yeah, so like Brad said, remember the industry standards are common office buildings, or like Brad mentioned, we have the RTF, super old building, law enforcement center, which is obviously a jail, JAF. So unique buildings compared to what the industry standard is based off of. Couple of fluctuations in there, like the RTF, it runs pretty good 2015 through 2018, then we have a pretty good spike in 2019. There was some pretty significant work that took place at the RTF that year. Boiler replacements and the sanitary sewer lift station replacement. Now, capital projects are not included in this graph, but there was a ton of work. The old boilers were actually buried on site, which were found, so our highway operations staff went and removed that. There were some flood mitigation things that we did that the highway operations staff did, so that some of that work they did is kind of shown in this higher year for that building. The JAF, the fluctuation in there, it's a small building, really low square foot, so the smallest dollar amount can make that fluctuate. So our biggest thing with that building is any damage caused there by the folks staying there, so that can really offset that number in here. I think relatively looking at it all though, we're sitting year to year is really good, and then weather can also play a factor in this.
So with new technology supporting the asset management going forward, cartograph, and maybe the sort of remote system that I think was mentioned in here, but with the HVAC, being able to do some of that work remotely, where would you expect these numbers to go over the next 5 to 10 years through the rest of the facilities management plan?
I would say, if I was to predict, I would say kind of the same, trending flat. I don't expect them to go down by any means. Just because, energy costs, everything else goes up, right? But I think we'll have the biggest thing with the building automation system is more control, moderate the temperatures versus having to have this room up at 76 to keep it at 72, the hot cold. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. The cartograph, this is kind of one of those areas that needs to get advanced in the cartograph yet. One of the things that Brandon mentioned is our total costs. Our total costs we still do not have in the software yet. A lot of this is coming out of Lawson. So that's part of that next 50% is making sure we can track all our costs with the one system.
Thank you, Joe. Back over to you.
So that's really like a next step, is trying to merge what's in Infor and what's in Cartograph so that you have one system of record for all this.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, thanks. Let's look at page 13. I'm just curious, this data is it says from 2017 through 2019, and it's slips, trips at our buildings. And I'm wondering if you can talk about how you use this data, like how do you, on a daily basis, how do you use this information? And also whether we could start looking at this data annually to know if there are, there's a small number of incidents, like there's not a lot of data sets included in this, but is there a way to look at, are we making any improvements over time? So how do you use this?
I think some of it is, you'll see here in a little bit later as well, is some of the ADA things we've been doing. So the ADA survey is going to show us where there's gaps in the sidewalks, trip hazards, maybe the curb cuts aren't right. So that would be that part of it. As far as you can see the biggest issue is at the government center in the ice, and it's noted. It's along 4th Street out there, which is shade all day. So the guys can adjust their maintenance routines, which we've done. We've added liquid capabilities to our sidewalk program so that we can treat the areas before any potential snow or ice. So just constantly looking at what we can do to change that effect. And it's gonna be, you know, more to look at now, because it'll be the whole extent of Fourth with the new building, so.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, that is right. Okay. All right. Let's go the other way. Let's talk about utility costs. And I had a couple questions related to this. So, so obviously, when you look at the slide, the thing that stands out is August of 2019, right? So can we just start there? Like, what is that big spike? July of 2019, August of 2019, big spikes in expenses. Do we know? I'm not sure who's the best person to speak to that.
Yeah, so I think we had a calculating glitch in this one between the two. As you can see, in August of 2019 to September 2019, there was no calculation for the government center in that. I got put in the other.
Okay.
But all across the graph,
Yep.
again, this one mostly is related to the weather. So our water and sewer bills, you know, they don't really change a whole lot. The majority of our buildings, they can a little bit with the LEC, depending on the amount of inmates. As far as the rest of the buildings, sewer and water is pretty well flat throughout the years. Your gas and electric is where really things change. You can see February 2019, March 2019, super high, right? Super cold then as well.
Yep.
I went back and looked. So, in the same with July and even the August of 2019, you know, super warm. And it's, we try to be as efficient as we can. We, during the weekends and overnights, we'll turn the systems way down so that we're not keeping a constant temperature. But if we see weather patterns coming where it's going to be 100 degrees for 4 days in a row, we keep them systems running so they're not playing catch up and working twice as hard, right? Same in the winter. If we see several nights of sub-zero temperatures, we're going to keep the boilers rolling all night long and maintaining that versus having to try to play catch up for a whole day later.
Sure. Sure.
As we put in the narrative, we specifically picked these 2 years because staff and management were curious to see if there has been a COVID effect of some of the shutdown and not having as many employees reporting to the buildings to see if that made any impact on our utility costs. I think the graph bears out that there's not a lot of impact. The one area that maybe is worthy of looking a little bit more into is if you just separated the water. I'm guessing the water usage may be much different, but when it comes to the other major utilities, we still had to turn the lights on and heat the buildings regardless if staff was here or not.
Yeah.
But that's why we picked those 2 years, just to see if it gave us any insight.
Yeah, it's a nice display. Okay. Just a couple more questions on the ADA piece. So the goal on this is 100%, correct? Like that we're 100% compliant with ADA. So first of all, is a new building built to be ADA compliant, 100% compliant?
Correct.
Okay. And then how does this data factor into plans to remodel this building?
Yeah, so any areas in the current government center or justice center, any of the areas that are going to be touched by the current remodel will be brought up to ADA standards.
Okay.
The rest of the other areas that need improvement here are going to be part of a forthcoming larger plan that, you know, it's going to be, is it going to take us 5 years and X amount of dollars to get us to 100% compliance? So that's the next stage of this. This part was just the survey itself. And really, I think we're doing pretty good for the age of our buildings and some of the improvements we've made as of recent, but the larger, more comprehensive plan will really get us into that. What's it going to take? What's the dollars it's going to take?
Do you have a target date for when we're fully ADA compliant? Or is that planning yet to do, maybe you said?
That planning, it's, you know, I think that's part of that piece of how much really is there, what is the type of work, and the funding.
Are there grants for that, or do those retrofits all come at county expense?
I think for the most part, county expense. Yeah, I think.
This, what's on the screen is a screenshot of a dashboard that Chris Ross helped prepare to take all the data that was collected from staff and try to put it in a meaningful format so that we can drill down building by building and look at some of these non-compliance issues. And while we can't show it on a page like this, but we could go to the RTF and know exactly what are the major non-compliant issues. Or in this building, what are the major non-compliant issues? And as everyone knows, this building will go under renovation next year. And as part of that renovation, we'll make sure that we use this information to determine what needs to be retrofitted to become ADA compliant.
Okay, the next few slides really look at sort of a balance between time and talent spent on preventative maintenance versus regular maintenance, and just sort of how that workflow manages in your areas. So on this slide on page 16, could I ask one of you just to walk through, like, just what story is this data telling you?
I might call on Brandon. Brandon, if you heard the question, you're close to this data. Can you talk to this?
Yeah, sure, of course. So this is comparing the amount of time and the amount of actual tasks, the work that all of our preventative maintenance takes the guys for throughout the whole year. So this data, if I remember correctly, was from January 1st to the end of September, maybe halfway through, but you'll see that each of our different PMs that we have, that's, everything from an annual PM every 12 months to weekly, broken up by the amount of hours for that PM type, and then also how many tasks, individual times that they've had to perform that task on an asset for each PM type. So you'll see that someone like Chad would, for a lot of the time spent on monthly, that's the biggest that we have out of, currently we have 142 different preventive maintenance plan in the system off of our 1,300 or so assets, and that's how it breaks down.
All right, thank you. Let's look at that a little different way. So this slide looks at sort of a breakdown of where time is spent by your teams, and there's an industry standard that says that there should be a 60 to 75% is kind of the range. The industry standard is range for preventative maintenance, and your teams are almost there. They're at 58%, so almost to that 60% figure. When you look at this breakdown of tasks, like, how do you think about this? There are a lot of areas in the county that are trying to move into more prevention and less reaction, and you guys are doing that work. Like, you're really driven to do that. And so when you look at this data, how are you moving your folks more into that preventative maintenance? And where would you like to see those numbers a year from now?
Well, I think definitely higher. I think we're sitting really good right now.
Mm-hmm.
One part of it where we need to really break this data down a little bit more is some of our PM tasks are on things that might not necessarily be just because you're doing a PM may not result on if something fails with it in the future, like fire extinguishers or checks monthly. That's a preventive maintenance rate, but it's not just because it doesn't have a grease zerk or a belt may not prevent a task coming out of it. So I think we're sitting really good on what our PM is compared to tasks, but I think it's part of breaking it down a little bit further. Chad or Brandon, do you have a little more to add to that maybe?
Yeah, I would just add that you got to remember too, when looking at this, that other tasks also includes all the work that they do for internal requests that employees send in, and that could be, necessarily could be something on an asset, but a lot of times we're talking about, light bulbs to temperature complaints to odor and pest control, that the whole gamut. So it's hard to compare other tasks to PM because it's not all other tasks are strictly just assets breaking.
Right.
So that number, our percentage in theory could be higher if we removed any kind of request work out of it. And then our 58% would, I'm sure, be much higher than it is now. But just take that into consideration when looking at the other tasks percentage.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So when I was looking at this graph, I was really interested in the other tasks. And Brandon, one of the directions my mind went, that how many of those tasks are somebody calling facilities and saying it's too hot where I'm sitting right now, and then 10 minutes later, the same person calls and says it's a little too cold where I'm sitting right now. And then there are all the things of like, I wish my cue ball was a foot that way, or a foot in the other direction, and you come and move it, and then that's clearly not PM, that falls into those other tasks. So my bigger question from that is, what can the business units do to serve you guys as well as you're serving us? Because as Brad said at the beginning, facility staff steps up time and time again to do, the really big stuff and the really small stuff, pretty much without complaint and without fail. So are there things the 40-odd other departments in the county could be doing to support your work?
It's a good question. I think some of it we have remedied. I'll just use, for instance, heating and cooling. Encouraging people to dress for the weather, dress appropriately. We have done some things where we've set our range a little bit different, maybe a little more open, so it's maybe, in the summer is 70 to 74. That way there's, a range, because there's a lot of going around and taking the temperature. It might be 71. Well, it's supposed to be set at 72. So we've kind of gone to more of a range in the buildings, but I think that's one thing in that area is, people dressing appropriately. Now, new building is going to be balanced a lot better than what this, this building is quite old, 40 years old. The biggest part of this building with the renovation is going to be the infrastructure, the HVAC, and it'll be the same thing. We'll get it balanced, and hopefully those issues will take. The rest of them, light bulb goes out, it goes out. There's not much, staff could do for that. I think we've gotten a little bit better as an organization as far as moves as well. And obviously the space study and the new move-arounds, new building will help with that as well.
I might redirect that question to Chad, because Chad, I've heard from other facilities staff that sometimes the requests that come in are not that clear at first, and so there's a lot of time spent just trying to really understand what the request is. Can you speak to that or any other aspect of Jake's question?
There's some times when it's not quite clear, but I've, like you guys have been saying, we just step up and do what needs to get done.
Cartograph, when someone, like from an employee uses the internal request portal, there are fields that are mandatory to fill out to submit, and we've made it so you have to submit a certain amount of information so the guys can at least get back to that person and ask more questions if needed. So I think that's another way Cartograph has kind of helped streamline that issue a little bit since 360 in our last system that we used. At least I hope it does. I haven't heard many complaints from the maintenance workers about that.
That's a good example. When you look at this data, like when you think about the new building, or you think about all the growth at the campus out by the highway department, right? The new cold storage building and some of the sheriff's stuff that's out there. And just as you look at that getting bigger, as you look at the new government center, does this kind of data help you plan staffing or resources, or like, does this in any way, I know that forecasting isn't to the place that you want it to be, but does this data offer you any tools to plan for how are we going to manage these new expanding complexes?
Yeah, I don't know if necessarily this exact slide gives that detail, but more to the individual tasks.
Okay.
We'll give you that detail. you know, like obviously like the RTF old, there's gonna be a lot more
Yes.
tests, but maybe not as many as a government center where you have several hundred people in it at any given day. So probably not this exact slide, but more of the breakdown of the workload of the individual staff.
Can we look at that, Joe? Like this one? Is that part of the data that you're referring
Yep.
to? Okay. Okay, so what does this tell you about planning for staff or specialists or project assignments, those kinds of things?
Sure. Just like it says, the task time, the time it takes to time between the request and the task.
Yeah.
And the task time itself. Trying to maintain that pretty good level of the first, 1 through 4 staff there. This data is a little skewed back to the beginning of the session here where we talked about the learning curve. Part of the spikes with number 5 and number 7 were a result of the learning curve. It's not that the work wasn't getting done or the request wasn't getting done. It just wasn't getting entered into the system in a timely manner. So those are the things that the next time we're here, I hope it's to be level across the board. But you can look at, this data and take what was the task, how much time did it take, was it 1 or 2 staff person, and reassigning to different buildings may not be, all 9 of the maintenance workers know each building in and out. So it might be just reassigning for a week, or, if there's a large, one building may have way more annual PMs that in January, maybe we need to reassign an extra employee to that building. So
Sure.
some of that data that helps with that.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Jake, are you me? All right, and just looking at the last page, it looks at the volume of requests per month this year. And so I'm just wondering if you, as you look at this, is this data pretty clear in Cartograph? Like, it seems like one of the big advantages of Cartograph is you're able to track the numbers of tickets and when they're open and closed more closely. That seems like a big advantage that we didn't have before Cartograph. So as you look at this volume of requests, is there anything that you, like when you look at that, January, February, March look pretty high, summer months look a little lower, like are there things that that tells you about the workflow?
Again, yeah, I think the bigger thing with this chart was that learning opportunity again, as you can see.
Okay.
We want every month to look like what September, August, July look like, within 1 or 2 of each other.
Yep.
The January, February, March, April was the guys playing catch up and learning the system and closing out more tickets from the previous month prior to.
So that doesn't necessarily reflect that tickets weren't completed. It reflects that they didn't get entered into the system.
Right, and they might have been in the system that's just not closed out.
Okay.
Right, Brandon?
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to the previous slide as well. When looking at staff number 5, for instance, it says his task time average is 39 days, but I ran a quick report before this meeting, and his average task is closed 6 days before his due dates, typically. So his work is being submitted on time for the most part, but because the due dates could be, up to 12 months for like an annual PM, for instance, they'll sit in his inbox for longer, which would then skew those numbers. So you got to know exactly what each task is asking as far as the due dates go before you can really judge those numbers. And then to kind of talk about the next slide and request, you have to consider that a lot of those tasks are being, especially those early month tasks are from 2019 that might be due within later, or they just couldn't get done later. Requests don't have due dates. We only can go by how long they're open to how long they're closed. But we can also get a whole lot more information. We can run reports to see which departments are submitting the most requests down to which employees are submitting the most requests, what type of requests we get the most when we get those requests, there's certain systems that we could implement with Cartograph to help us kind of future-proof certain seasons and automate a lot of that work for the guys so they don't have to spend so much time in front of the computer to create the requests or the tasks themselves.
Sure.
So this data is really great, I think, as far as the upper level goes on how we can use it to kind of alleviate some of that computer time on the guys, but also get us ready for different seasons and different months ahead of time in a much better, more reliable fashion.
Great, thank you. Okay, I wonder if we could just ask just sort of a general question about, just as you think about taking care of our buildings, just our buildings across, I think there were 13 buildings total, plus parks, plus some towers, like lots of assets. As you think about that, what keeps you up at night?
You know, 8 years ago when I started, I would say, is the building going to be froze up in the morning, or is it going to be 100 degrees at night? How many roof leaks are we going to have? But I think where we're sitting now, the whole department has done a lot of good work, and we've had a lot of support by the board with investments. We mostly have after we do the Justice Center and Government Center, we'll have all new roofs out there. So I think with the investments we've made in the last several years,
So in pretty good shape?
I don't lose any sleep on the facility side.
Okay,
Sleeping like a baby.
that's good. That's good news, isn't it?
Isn't that up every 2 hours or is it no?
Try all night.
Yeah.
So we're not getting nickel and dime for that.
Right,
Right, by keeping up on this stuff.
correct.
That's a good thing.
Is there data, if you're here a year or 2 years from now, is there data that you'd really like to have that you don't have right now that would be meaningful to you?
I think two of the bigger ones for me, actually I'll say three, is the future forecasting. Being able to look, is Air Handler 7 performing the same as Air Handler 8? Is it going to make the 15-year life expectancy, or do we need to plan to get it in, the CIP sooner? Two is the cost, being able to look at the costs and what the buildings are costing us as a whole, the staff time that's going into each of the assets. And then three was the, Brad, do you have any? I have a third one, let me think.
Yeah, I'll let you think. I'm not sure what the data will help us, but I think over the next 3 years, we really got to figure out how to staff or balance our staffing in each building. There's going to be so many changes, obviously, with the new building, the renovation of this building, and whether we just allocate resources that we're going here to the new building. That'll get us by for a year at least. We're looking at, in the future, dropping the Workforce Development Center, so that frees up another maintenance staff. So to me, that's going to be a big topic over the next few years, is how to right staff the buildings for the future. And this data will certainly be helpful. I mentioned we're going to do some operation plans for each building, so that's going to be kind of a product. I don't know yet whether we'll have new data coming out of that effort or not, but if we do, we'll certainly want to share that with you.
That was mine, the staffing one.
Can I make a comment
Please.
too? Is that okay? So in reading this, because I've written a couple of these packets in my time here, I think this is maybe the one that had it was absent of any bragging or anything like humble bragging about the work you do. And there was a measure that's not in here that IT tends to talk about a lot, and that's like uptime. So the software network uptime. There's nothing in here about asset uptime or facility uptime. And it's close to, in my experience, close to 100%. And just on behalf of the staff, thank you, because folks like me who face the public directly in the libraries and health and human services and some parts of the sheriff's office, we get those direct, thank you so much from the people we serve, the people we're here to serve as government. I don't know that those thanks always get back to the folks who make that possible, who provide the foundation for all the services we offer. So just thank you for doing that. There's a lot to brag about.
Well, that was really gracious, and there is a lot to brag about. And I would echo that and also just underline just the extra effort that has gone into being able to bring a few people into this building and what that has meant for your staff and the extra time and commitment that has brought to making sure that rooms are clean and people are spaced out and that there's kind of really a genuinely responsible kind of approach to that your staff have always presented in this building. So we're really appreciative of that. All of us are really appreciative.
And that was an interesting conversation because obviously we have staff that want to make these buildings as safe and as safe as possible, the grounds, the buildings, as comfortable as possible for the public. We want people to come here. And so when we had the conversation that we are closing the buildings and we don't want people to come here, I could tell facilities staff that was kind of a knock on their pride a little bit because they take a lot of pride in having these buildings open to the public and serving the public.
Yeah, that personal responsibility really does shine through as a quality in their team. So, all right, with that, I think I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn it over to the chairman, ask for any questions from the board.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's effort on this. Looking to my left, looking in the digital domain, are there any questions that anyone would like to fire away? I have a couple comments, but we'll wait and see what we get.
I do, Commissioner, Mr. Chairman. I do also want to compliment Joe and the efforts with Cartograph. We got started. We had to put it on hold for a total IT epic. To change project managers more than once through this. And Brandon took a lot of ownership and leadership. I know Mary Keene played a role in it. Chad has been a driver of using and wanting to plan for it. But Joe all along also had a vision of using Cartograph. And to see that this has finally come to fruition, I remember sitting with him and Mary about 4 years ago for a Scott Delers. He's probably smiling in there. I can't see his face, but trying to have any data more than how many light bulbs we changed or how we did it was virtually impossible. And so the effort that has gone into this and the time and the planning, I also know that facilities has been willing to change some of their processes, things like changing cubes up and down. We're going to go away from that and how it's done and what should we do versus what should we contract, and looking at things like 8A and restrooms and upgrading them. It has taken a tremendous amount of effort and work, and just want to say thank you for that. And when I look at the data that I saw here a couple weeks ago at agenda review compared to what we were dealing with 4 years ago, it's tremendous. So thanks for all your efforts and continuing to use this free planning. I'm looking forward to your operational plans.
Thank you very much for that. That light bulb keeps coming up. Have you noticed that? I keep looking for my slide. I'm just wondering if we can put it to bed. Plus I'm only chair for this meeting and one more meeting. Under my watch, can we put to bed once and for all, how many county folks does it take to change a light bulb? Do we know that yet? We'll answer that later. We'll answer that later. Thanks for getting them changed anyway. Gotta have a little fun, right? Gotta have a little fun.
There's a lot of bulbs here.
There's a lot of bulbs, a lot of bulbs, and those LEDs do not last 10 years, let me tell you. I had a couple quick questions. Did I pick up that the Cartograph system is about 50-50 mobile, or at least some handheld? Did I hear that?
It could be actually 100% mobile. And I'll let Chad answer a little bit more because he's gone a little bit more mobile than everybody else. It could be 100% mobile if I was to use my laptop, right? And we're wireless and whatever. It's more of getting it so that it's on a little smaller on your iPhone.
Yes.
To use, and they're carrying ladders and everything else, so it makes it a little more clunky to try to carry a laptop around.
Yep, for sure.
So it's more getting that phone up to par with being able to, with full functionality.
And the software will get there, or is there working?
They're working on it with it's called Cartograph One. Like Brandon mentioned there, they continue to tweak to improve that.
And that's a free upgrade, did I hear? Did I hear that, anyone?
Yeah,
Free?
they do releases a couple times a year.
I have to ask. Yeah, probably not free, is my guess.
I don't know, we still pay a yearly software fee,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. And then I'm just curious, like roughly, like not the absolute smallest, but like what asset classes, like what's one of the smaller items that we track to one of the bigger items? Is it, I don't need to know the thing, but like just roughly, what are we tracking and getting on this? Is it primarily the infrastructure HVAC stuff, or is this like small mundane things too?
Yeah, for the most part, it's everything really. I mean, right from a boiler or chiller, which could be upwards of $1 million.
Right.
To, like I said, one of the PM tasks monthly is checking the fire extinguisher.
Right, okay. But it's mainly the infrastructure type things. It's not, this one doesn't track like computers, IT has that one that they're
Correct.
doing for that one.
Correct.
And then this one can be filed under the everyone's an expert category. We've been to the penthouse a couple times. It's a weird name for that thing, but it is weird. You do have an office there. That's bizarre, but like we have, our staff will go in and do the PMs on that and check filters, or do we contract for that?
For the most part, that's our staff. There's some of the bigger ones with the chillers. There's certain things that companies come for. Some of the fire sprinkler testing.
Sure, yeah, yep,
Some
okay.
of that is contracted out. The majority of checking belts, filters is internal staff.
And when do we schedule commissioners skydiving in place and those air handlers? Is that still forthcoming?
That's too low. We'll take you to one of the towers.
Oh, boy. Be careful what you ask for. Okay, anything else in digital world or on site here? Not seeing anyone jumping to the forefront, so thanks for your effort and keeping us hot, keeping us cold, and keeping us, felt like Little Red Riding Hood, just right. Just right. I know the new building will be much easier, and this building will be much easier as well once we get through that. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very
We're going to move on to the consent agenda. I'm going to read through these items, and they will pass in one motion as they've been thoroughly vetted through staff. So let's go ahead and read that. 6.1, looking to adopt resolution number 2020-202, approving entering into a service agreement with Avertest LLC, DBA AveraHealth for drug testing services. 6.2, adopt resolution number 2020-203, approving amendment number 3 to the Minnesota Department of Human Services grant number 133786 to deliver mental health crisis services. 6.3, adopt resolution number 2020-204, approving amendment number 3 to attachment number 2 of the master agreement with Canvas Health, Inc. to provide adult and children's mobile mental health crisis services. 6.4, adopt resolution number 2020-205, authorizing application for and acceptance of grant funds from UCARE to reduce obstacles to health and improve outcomes. 6.5, adopt resolution number 2020-206, authorizing entering into a cooperative agreement with the City of Savage for cost participation for the pavement rehabilitation project on County Highway 42 in the City of Savage. 6.6, adopt resolution number 2020-207, authorizing an amendment to the Culver Professional Services Agreement for an additional $28,000 for technology projects. 6.7, adopt resolution number 2020-208, approving a 20% allocation of the 2020 net tax forfeited land sales funds to the Parks Improvement Fund. 6.8, adopt resolution number 2020-209, sustaining a special fund in 2021 for solid waste management. 6.9, adopt resolution number 2020-210, authorizing the countywide access control upgrade project contract be awarded to LVC Companies, Inc. 6.10, adopt resolution number 2020-211, authorizing an amendment to an agreement with Verizon Wireless for the expansion of a Verizon communication tower on our new building, GC West, in exchange for an in-building radio distribution devices system. 6.11, adopt resolution number 2020-212, authorizing the Justice Center and Law Enforcement Center new courtroom audio video project contract be awarded to AVI-SPL. 6.12, authorize release of requests for applications for 2021 recycling infrastructure, innovation and outreach grants, and 2021 organic recycling collection grant. 6.13, adopt resolution 2020-213, approve the release of properties in the O&E development in Newmarket Township from the Territory First Edition Developer Agreement. 6.14, approve the request for preliminary plat and final plat of Endeavor consisting of 2 lots and 1 outlot on 35.14 acres, 3-way development agreement and conditional use permit for Eric Carlson, applicant and property owner in Section 13 of Newmarket Township. 6.15, approve the request for a conditional use permit for sales office, showroom, and assembly of boat lifts, docks, and canopies, Travis Brick applicant and property owner in Section 22 of Louisville Township. 6.16, approve renewal applications for Scott County intoxicating liquor, brewery, and wine licenses for 2020 within the Scott County Townships. 6.17, approve payroll processing of personnel actions. Those are the 17 items on consent. Are there any that would like more information or to have pulled? Looking on my screen, looking.
Chair, I will move approval of those 17 items.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion on those consent items as read? Otherwise, JJ, we will look to you for a roll call, please.
Commissioner Weckman-Brecky,
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf,
Aye.
Commissioner Beer,
Aye.
Commissioner Beard,
Aye.
Commissioner Ulrich.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Now I see Claire as we look at 7.1 to consider and adopt the 2021 Scott County Legislative Platform. Good afternoon, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine, thank you. I have been listening for several hours and doing other things in between time, but just waiting for our turn to come up and talk about our legislative priorities once again.
Sounds good.
As you recall, we did this during the bonding, or during the workshop. I looked at Perry's thing that he just posted and saw bonding and popped into my head. But during the workshop a couple of weeks ago, and so we wanted to bring this to a public forum now as well, and also get your formal approval of these priorities and positions that we talked about earlier. And so I just want to run through these relatively quickly because I know you are familiar with them. But as a reminder, and if there would be any discussion about moving any of these around from like a priority into a position or a position into a priority, we still have that opportunity to make a quick switch. So the first thing we have is to support an increase in the state deputy registrar fees for transactions for the new services being performed at that office. And this is mainly for the real and enhanced IDs. And this is very time intensive. They estimate that about $4 more on each transaction would help cover that cost. And so there is a statewide organization that is also hoping to move this legislation forward, but Scott County would like to support that because it is costing us money as it currently sits. The next one is to support the reform of the Metropolitan Council governance structure. So it follows the principles established by the Metropolitan Governance Reform Initiative that Scott County is part of with 3 other counties. And as you know, that those priorities or those principles are that a majority of the Met Council members would be elected officials and that the cities would be able to choose their own representatives. Currently, the governor chooses all of them. Then that the counties would be able to choose their own representatives. The terms would be staggered and that members would include representation from every metropolitan county government, and voting would be structured based on population and also with an eye to checks and balances, which means that we're hoping that each county, each geographic area of a county would also have representation, so that the land mass issue is a big issue. So we want to make sure that that's dealt with. The next thing we would like to support is a statewide solution to cover expenses associated with the disposal of e-waste. The piles are getting bigger all the time. And after Christmas, you can imagine all the people who will be wanting to bring more of their old computers and televisions to the household hazardous waste site. And it costs us money, quite a bit of money, to dispose of that. And so there is a proposal out there that would put a fee on when you purchase those items that would be put into a pool at the state level and dispersed for those who are accepting that waste and disposing of it. So it would help reduce those costs. Right now, they estimate that for each person who comes to our household hazardous waste collection, there's an average of 34 pounds of e-waste brought in. The next is making select COVID-19 health and human service waivers and modifications permanent. And this has been discussed. Some of them were granted in special sessions that have come up, and they were all extended until the governor's emergency declarations are over. But some of them are very sensible initiatives, and we'd like to see them stay in place. Next, we would like to support child-specific data sharing between child welfare, public health, and education. The reason for this is you can have a child who has come into the county programs, but the education system doesn't get any of that information necessarily. There's so much privacy involved, and vice versa. The schools might have information that would help with the families that the counties are helping to support, but that isn't shared. And this may have to be still all involving parental approval of that sharing, but right now it just can't happen because of the current laws in place. Next, Perry. Okay, the next is to maintain the current formula for the distribution of the motor vehicle lease sales tax. This is really important to Scott County. We get a lot of money for our highway program through this. It's critical funding, and we want to make sure that that does not disappear. There's others that have set their sights on some of this money, and we will be fighting to maintain the formula as it is now for our portion of it. Support a gas tax increase of 7 cents phased in over several years. This is an initiative that somewhat started with scale, and we keep asking for more projects and more money for road projects. And so this is something that we think that it would be constitutionally dedicated strictly to roads and bridges. Gas prices are low. I know that's a bonus right now. And it would be phased in over several years on our suggestion, maybe 3 cents, 2 cents, so that the impact on the consumer wouldn't be so great. But it would really help with our local road projects too, because right now we're contributing significantly to projects through our transportation sales tax. And some of that more of it should be picked up by the state, but they're saying they don't have any funding for it. But this would certainly help them with their construction programs.
Claire,
Hey,
this is Tom Wolf. How much does
Hit your green, hit your green.
How much does each penny contribute to the, is that 50 million, did I hear?
No, only 31 million.
31 million. So this
It may
whole,
even be down right
so
now.
this whole thing would be 200 million possibly, right?
Right.
And so I'm on the I-35 committee, and that 494 I-35, I think they're looking at like 250 million. So that could be eaten up pretty quick just on one project, right?
Right, 1 year, it could be gone on a project of that magnitude. The other reason we picked this in the discussion with the scale members is that it just keeps us under the national average for gas tax. We're a little over 7 cents under the national average right now. And somebody said, well, it's okay to be average, but we don't want to be over that. So 7 cents would be their preference.
So before we move on, Claire, this is Dave. I'm not super excited about that because I get it. They're always asking, or saying, we don't have the money, we don't have the money. And I know this is a scale initiative, so that's fine. And I sort of go along with that reluctantly. But can we also somehow, I don't know, a 1-2 punch, yes, fine if we're gonna do that, but man, can you keep looking for some cuts or start looking for some cuts? I just feel like this is always one of those things that's said without the expectation of, hey, we're also expecting you to, do your due diligence and try to find some savings as well. I just feel like that needs to be part of it. I know maybe not necessarily, I don't know how you word that, but it just can't always be more without like, hey, are you looking under every rock?
Yeah, and part of the
Are
problem is, I
you
would
talking
say,
specifically about the transportation program then?
Well, I mean, is it if we're saying that this is gonna be earmarked, I mean, everything, of course, but where this is gonna go and who this is that's gonna land on, that yes, I mean, everyone's trying to be more efficient, but not always everyone is.
and part of the problem with this is cars are getting so efficient, we're not using as much gas as before, and some of these electric vehicles aren't using any at all, so we're not getting any of those dollars from. So I understand
is.
both sides.
Yeah.
I do. I don't like it either. But then I saw this morning on the Business Channel that California's gas is at $3.21 or something a gallon. So, yeah. So I'm not, saying.
No, I know,
raise it
no,
up
we,
there, but
yeah, I just,
Commissioner Beer, on a gas tax, by constitution, it all goes towards transportation, the highway trust fund, all right? So 62% of it goes to MnDOT, 29% of it is divided up between the 87 counties, and then the other 9% goes out to the, 600 and some municipalities, or however many it is, that are large enough to be considered full state aid cities. So this is one that is dedicated towards transportation only. It doesn't go to fund any of the general government or other type things that income taxes or, other types of sales taxes do. This one does go totally for transportation. The counties and cities are also a recipient of the increases. And to Commissioner Wolf's point, it is one of the major concerns. It has shown some signs now of beginning to drop due to the efficiencies of the vehicles that are out on the road, which is a good thing from an environmental standpoint. But it doesn't help keep the lanes maintained that this money goes for.
yeah, I guess my point is I just wanted to make sure that, it's always part of the conversation. I know it rarely happens, but it's just not an expectation that, oh yeah, raise the taxes, everything's good. Like, there's an expectation that we're all doing our part to try to find what we can that can be cut or that's obsolete or can be done with less, or I don't know. I just want to have that part of the conversation.
And to Commissioner Wolf's concern, we could add a sentence, something like, a formula for equitable charges for electric vehicles should also be developed. If we wanted to add that, if we have a consensus from the board, because it's true that as we get more and more electric vehicles on the road, this gas tax has less and less benefit. And also the burden falls heavily on those that are still gas powered, of course.
well, then Claire, let's take it one step further and, they're making all these nice bike lanes everywhere. I'm partly kidding, but half of me says those bike lanes are a lot nicer than roads are. So, okay.
Did you want to include that?
Yeah,
A formula for equitable charges for electric
I'm
vehicles?
just saying, those bike lanes are pretty nice and they don't contribute much at all.
I think what he's saying is, does the toll bridge exclusion, does that, can that be used for bike paths or
Yes.
especially 10-foot wide ones?
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting off track, but.
Well, is there any consensus around adding a sentence about formula for equitable charges for electric vehicles?
I would agree with that. Yep. Because what if everybody does electric vehicles? At some point, we'll have to change the formula altogether, right?
That's true.
I would support that because, and we know that the legislature and different committees are working on that, talking about it. It's just saying that, yeah, we want you to get moving on that because it already is making a difference on tax revenues. And yeah, I think we're seeing the results of the decrease in gas tax revenues with MnDOT and what they're able to contribute, and it's not good.
Okay, we will add that. And so when you make your motion, we'll just say as amended. and have that a formula for equitable charges for electric vehicles should also be developed, added to that. Okay, the next one is to support structural change in the distribution of funding for community corrections. We're looking for a 4% minimal increase. We've been asking for this for several years. Somehow it always gets left out. And we are a community corrections county. It's very important for us for managing our people who are on probation and such. And so we're really hopeful that this will be, I know there won't be a lot of money available to address needs this year, but this has been an ongoing need that has been brought before legislators frequently, and hopefully this will be the year for it. And then support a minimum of 40% of the parks legacy fund to be allocated to metro parks. We have that 40% to metro parks, 40% to the DNR, 20% for greater Minnesota regional parks. And so we want to maintain at least that. Many people in the metro parks community believe that we are carrying a heavier load for usage of parks, and so therefore maintenance is more. We just have a very heavy use, and during this pandemic it has gotten even heavier. People have really gone to the outdoors, and so we don't want to lose any ground here. In fact, we may want to push towards some increased funding in that area. The next one is to support increased mental health funding for the full continuum of care, including our mobile crisis, adult mental health initiatives, school-based mental health grants, and funding for law enforcement for mental health dual response. This would help us too with our new IRTS facility, just everywhere. And there's a great need for it. As we know, the pandemic has brought forth more mental health needs than we've seen recently. And so continued funding for all of those areas is really important. Next, we would like to support the expansion of community living infrastructure grants to improve opportunities for Minnesotans with disabilities who live in the community. This is actually more of an infrastructure grant for the administration of helping people. There's sometimes, I mean, if you have no one and no money to support a program, you can't take on a program. And so that's basically what this one is about. It's kind of administrative infrastructure. It's not always a popular thing, but it certainly is a necessary thing in order to make these programs operate and to even think about if you can accept grants that may be available for some of these housing programs. Then we also have support for the expansion of the housing support demonstration project, and this would allow Metro-wide access to housing support vouchers, so to speak. And it is especially targeted for people who are experiencing homelessness, who have disabilities. And right now we're not included. Currently 4 of the metro counties are in it, and Carver, Scott, and Washington County are not. So we're trying to expand the language and include us, and also expand the number of people or families that would be eligible for it. Currently it's like 269, and we're trying to get it up something like that. And we're trying to get it up to 500. Because of course we want support from the other counties that already receive this, and we won't get support if they think it's going to, the current number will be divided by even more counties. So we're trying to increase we would try and increase the number of people who would be eligible as well. They have to be income eligible, of course, too. But what that means to the demonstration, the support demonstration, is they actually get significant help with finding jobs or completing education or getting appointments. There's staff there involved for these very needy people to keep them stable and their families stable. Then we'll also be supporting some of the SCALE, MICA, and AMC-led initiatives, and here's some examples of them. One would be the SCALE initiative for legislative authority to assess street infrastructure fees that improves safety and capacity for new development, and then support state funding to reimburse the federal government for any DHS payment and billing miscalculations, which were made. The governor told the counties last year that they would be reimbursed, but that did not happen. Still kind of looking for that money. AMC is supportive of that in particular. And support pursuing investments for generating wetland banking credits, which we all need as we do road projects. And we did get $8 million in the October bonding bill, but this is an ongoing need as projects continue. You continue to need those wetland credits. And then also ongoing is support a bonding bill for the local bridge. I think that's supposed to say local road and bridge replacement programs. We do get funding out of both of these programs, and they're important to our programming as well. There's always a long list. You kind of wait your turn. If money goes into these programs, and you might get some if you move up the list enough. And I know we've waited quite a while for bridge in particular funding, but it's important for our local road program too. So those are our priorities. Is there any comment on any more of them? Senator Beer, or Senator, that's an old habit. Commissioner Beer, if you want to put any other language in about maybe looking for efficiencies, we could potentially add some language like that it wouldn't necessarily even have to be with the transportation one, but just anywhere that it is our priority that the state continue to seek efficiencies in all of its programming.
I would feel better. And I'd just be able to sleep like Joe then, because he sleeps pretty well, right?
So we could say,
Sleeps like Joe.
we support program. I can work on this a little bit. Perry's going to present the next list very quickly on the positions that we're adopting. These are not necessarily the top priorities, but things that are important that will be coming forward probably, and we want to have you on record as supporting those positions so that when Perry goes down to lobby, he knows that he has the board's support on it. So here he is.
Mr. Chairman,
I'll be back.
Claire, this is Mike. Just one observation, as I was reading through these, I was struck by the amount of ask that we have. And I know I've commented in the past, one of the things I was really proud about Scott County when I represented them was we really never asked for much. We asked for some policy changes so we could do things better, more effectively, more efficiently. But this list seems to have a lot of handout it's like we're standing there with our handout saying, give us more money for stuff. And that, I'm just taken aback a little bit by that. There seems to be an assumption that somehow all of a sudden it's the county's responsibility to fix every problem, and it's going to take money, so we want the state to give us money to do that. I don't want to overreach with the comment, and I don't necessarily have any ideas on how to rewrite this to address those concerns, except that it's like we've assumed the position that everybody else does, that the only thing we do ask government for is to grow. So just an observation. I intend to support this list as it is, but I want us to think about that, I guess, going forward, that, boy, all of a sudden we act like we act like everybody's in trouble and we've got to fix it and we just need more. And the legislators are going to be, well, not wrestling with a deficit exactly this year, but boy, that $600 million surplus is going to be spent 6 ways to Sunday. And the deficit going forward is because of things like this. We just automatically assume budgets grow X% because the need never gets smaller, it always gets bigger. And we have yet to see a government program that goes away, runs its course and goes away. Just some stray thoughts, I guess, as I think about this. I don't mean to rain on the parade, but I do owe it to my constituents to express a concern that we act like we're on the let's grow the government bandwagon.
There are some things that are inflationary increases we need, like in community corrections and for the deputy registrars and things like that as costs continue to increase. If the state expects us to do those things, they do need to keep up with the costs that are their arm of the state, the counties, incur when they administer them. So yeah, I understand.
To the extent that, yeah, we're administering state programs they require, I have to agree with you. But the deputy registrar thing, thank goodness, you know, the state mandated that we do it and then said, you're going to do it with our software, darn it. And it was a train wreck from the get-go. And 110 or 120 million taxpayer dollars later, they throw in the towel and say, well, you know what, there's a private sector solution here that's only going to cost us, what, 38 million or something? And it's up and running already. So hopefully that technology fee can be transferred to other needs and purposes. That's just one small example of government at work, but yeah, okay, I'll just hit the mute button now and sit and listen quietly while Perry talks about policy need.
I'd like to respond to Commissioner Beard. We hear you. I get the philosophy and I agree, but I really think that most of the priorities we have here are doing exactly what Claire and you just talked about, trying to make sure that we're able to do what we're being mandated to do. And in some ways, lessening government, you know, decreasing or keeping some of those waivers for HHS is probably backing up on the intensity of government. Having people who purchase TVs actually have to pay to dispose of those TVs instead of us and government and all the taxpayers, even those who don't purchase a ton of TVs, do it. So I guess I'd like to look at the half glass full on this list and say we're doing some of exactly what you are advocating for.
Good point, Commissioner, and that's a lot of this is policy adjustments that help us do things better and more effectively and more efficiently. I have to agree with you. I get that.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. As Claire indicated, these legislative positions have not risen to the level of priority, but they are recommendations from staff, and a lot of them you're familiar with over the years, that we recommend that we watch and that we have a position on if legislation comes along. The first one is in public safety, law enforcement, and judiciary. We support the continuation of training reimbursement for post-board. Previously, it was $360 per officer. It was brought up to $1,000, but that sunsets in 2021. And the sheriff's office would like to have that continued at that level because there have been additional training requirements put upon them. Under general government, the first one would be to remove the local government salary cap, support the repeal of this restriction, raise the cap, or consider the governor's total compensation to determine the level of the cap. Next one is to oppose restrictions on local government levies, leave the levy decisions to the local officials. We oppose, for data practices, this is along with the coalition, is to support limitations on data requests, frivolous data requests that come primarily to the sheriff's office. We'd like those data requests to be in alignment with the recent one that was done for public safety for body cams. That legislation helped out a lot with the sheriff's office. We oppose any unfunded mandates do no harm to both your comments recently. We support paid family for paid family medical leave mandate. We have a concern about this legislation that has come up that it could severely impact our budget for the county. We already have collective bargaining agreements in place, and if the legislation was to come up for increased paid family medical leave, that we get credit for our existing PTO structure. We oppose PTSD legislation that presumes all work comp claims are currently the current employee's fault. Those, as you may understand, some PTSD can come from years ago or from other employment occupations. We support the continued border-to-border broadband grant funding. It was previously at the 35 million annual funding or 70 million biannual. We'd like to have that back to that level. We support the increase of library construction grant, broaden the use of that fund to enhance library services. That funding has been flat since 2009. JJ, if you could slide down a little bit, please. Under Health and Human Services, this is a new one, is the Housing Support Collection Incentive. As you might recall, some of the other programs have a incentive where some of the money goes back to the county for collecting the fees. So we would propose a legislative change to provide counties with an incentive of 25% of the housing support collection to be paid to the county for the work associated with that collection. Currently, counties are required to do the work, but they are not incentivized or reimbursed for it. So a simple change to the statute would allow that recovery of that money and be in alignment with the other programs. We'd like to support expand funding for basic sliding fee childcare. Scott County does not have a wait list for childcare assistance, which creates a barrier for employment. We support housing initiatives incorporated in the SCALE platform. The two of them are develop tax incentives to keep rental units affordable to low-wage families by using targeted support from local and state governments. And we support create tax credits to incentivize the construction of affordable homes in Minnesota communities, including the use of tax increment financing and TIF to encourage residential development for workforce housing. In environmental and natural resources management area, under environmental health, this is a one that is new as well. As we would support the funding of the St. Paul cogeneration plant so it can continue to accept bio-waste, mainly trees, in order to save dollars associated with predominantly with wood waste, largely from the removal of trees associated with the emerald ash borer. That plant is in jeopardy of closing, and we would want to see that the state help fund that so that trees can and all other bio-waste can continue to be brought there for the metro area. Under parks, we support the continued state general fund and lottery funding of operations and maintenance funding for the metro regional parks. Scott County has been receiving about $325,000 annually, and if this fund was reduced or discontinued, it would likely result in budget or staff impacts. Under planning, again, similar to the under our priorities, is pay for safe roads, support the scale cities and townships seeking legislative authority to assess street infrastructure fees that would help pay for safety and capacity improvements. Under community services, under the assessors, this is in alignment with their association. They support revising antiquated legislation requiring physical visits to every parcel every 15 years. In 2019, the Minnesota Department of Revenue allows assessors to use pictometry in certain circumstances. However, the IAAO visitation standards is less restrictive, and they'd like to see that be in alignment with that standard of the IAAO. Under the deputy registrar, I'd like to see the allow the local deputy registrar offices to offer expanded services to customers such as self-service, online or mailing services similar to or in conjunction with how the customer can currently purchase directly from the state driver and vehicle services office. This may include, but is not limited to, allowing the customer an option to select a local office pickup for online purchases, authorizing it by mail transaction at the local office, or other online and kiosk services administered by the local deputy registrar offices. Under elections, we would support legislative efforts for increased direct balloting tabular feeds using the same model of the current in-person absentee process for absentee ballots versus mail-in ballots for early voting throughout the state up to 19 days prior to the election day. Voters would have the opportunity to see their ballot fed directly into the tabulary, get a message if certain races weren't going to be counted due to an error by the voter or overvoting or extraneous or marks on the ballot, and it would cut down dramatically on the cost of the envelopes and the internal processing time of staff. Also under elections, we would support the revised election notice requirements to include only publishing the date and voting hours for an election, plus the website, email, and phone number for voters to get additional information. Then eliminate the requirement to publish in the newspaper the same ballot which would be made available on the website, and have each unique ballot by polling location available for view and download. Under transportation, we support changing the condemnation process to require property owners in cases where negotiations have failed to reach an agreement, and that the property owner has hired an appraiser to disclose that appraisal prior to the deadline for the governmental agency to make its final written offer. If in the alternative, require the submission of the owner's appraisal 45 days before a condemnation commissioner's hearing. Provide local governments that issue utility permits the ability to collect a fee for the permitted utility companies to fund relocation of the utility as part of the highway and street construction projects. We would like to see expanded on this point. We'd like to see other associations help or other counties come in alignment with us on it, rather than us be on our own on this utility piece. Support continued funding of the suburban transit needs, the MVTA route 495 between Marshall Road and Trans Station and the Mall of America, and other reverse commute routes. We'd like to revise the formula to allocate additionally regionally administered motor vehicle sales tax to suburban transit providers. Support legislation or state credit to assist volunteer drivers for 1099 employees. The volunteer drivers, they face two challenges. First, some our auto insurers are increasing their insurance rates on the volunteer drivers, treating them like Uber drivers, and we would support any legislation. This is really a federal thing, but we'd support any kind of state legislation that would help our volunteer drivers. JJ, do you want to slide down, please?
Hey, can I ask, Perry, just Tom,
Yeah.
keep it down. So that first one there were those appraisals. This may sound kind of odd, but if somebody has 100 acres and we want to buy an acre of it, and all of a sudden they say, well, we've been assessing them at 10,000 acre now. That acre that we want to buy from them is now worth 80 or 100,000. Can we then assume that the rest of their property is worth 180,000 or 80,000 an acre and assess for that?
JJ, can you slide up more? It's all the way up to the.
Just the transportation and infrastructure. It's right under that.
No, Commissioner Wolf, you can't make that assumption.
But you know what I'm saying? It's funny how we're assessing people at 9 or 10,000 an acre, and then you want to buy an acre, and all of a sudden it's worth 80 or 90,000 an acre. It just, I don't know.
It's all ag as long as they're farming it, and we're not supposed to tax them at highest and best use, but we're supposed to pay them at that highest and best use. You bet.
Okay, I know. It's just an odd thing.
And then the final one is support funding for the Highway 169, Highway 282, and County Road 9 interchange. And if there's no questions or comments, I will turn it back over to Claire.
Did anyone have any other concerns about these positions? Going back priorities, I did write another cost priority down if you want to consider it, and it would be to support ongoing efforts to identify and implement cost-saving efficiencies in state programs, so that they know that one of our priorities is for them to continue to look for cost-saving efficiencies in all of the programs that they develop or expect us to implement as a local arm of the state.
Yeah,
So
I like that. I mean, to me, that kind of bridges what both the commissioners were talking about. Like, hey, we don't want to grow, but also we need to, do what we're supposed to do. But you guys do it too. Till the rules change, you guys try to find your savings as well. Don't just expect bigger, bigger, bigger. So I personally like that. So I don't know what anyone else thinks.
we can certainly add that in, it could be when you make the motion to approve these, say with the two additions of.
Will you read it again?
Pardon?
Will you read it again, please? You broke a little bit on mine.
Okay, it would be to support ongoing efforts to identify and implement cost-saving efficiencies in state programs.
Any feedback? I think there always needs to be that expectation of, hey, we're expecting everyone to think of taxpayers when every dollar is spent.
And then added on to the gas tax priority would be a formula for equitable charges for electric vehicles should also be developed. And this, I mean, this would potentially be when they register their cars or, you know, some kind of a pay per mile program, which they have considered. There are some initiatives already being looked at, and they, you know, but this would just say that we support those initiatives.
Now that to me almost flies in the face of the incentive to try to get more of those on the road.
It's true. That's why they haven't put more
I know.
tax on electric vehicles.
So
because
that's
they want to incentivize that.
That's not a favorite of mine, but that's me.
Yeah, you know, when you look at the scheme of things and the way the money flows, we just went through this on the Transportation Alliance last week at the annual meeting. The amount of transportation funding, which comes from four major buckets, sales tax on auto parts and repairs, driver's license, registration fees, and taxes on motor vehicle sales. Those are all pretty much whole, even during this pandemic. People apparently have been buying cars and licensing their cars. So those three buckets of money have been full or maybe even up a little bit. The one that's down is the gas tax, because people are buying new cars and they're not driving them very much. But in that subset is the electric car thing, and it's so minuscule that everybody likes to say, oh, they're not paying their fair share. But when you come to sales tax and registration fees, they pay the same as gasoline-powered automobiles do. So there's a principle that if they're not buying gas, they should pay the gas tax, but it's not as big a deal as you'd think it would be. Having said that, no, I'm not I think electric cars are really unique and kind of fun, but at the end of the day, Elon Musk just had a comment yesterday in one of the transportation journals I read that if we replaced all the automobiles in the United States with electric automobiles, the electric grid would completely shut down and we couldn't even watch TV or run our refrigerators because we'd all be busy charging our electric cars. Just, oh, by the way, we have a long ways to go on that thing. And then that whole scheme.
Yep.
Harry, I have a question. You introduced this section by saying what? That it was, these hadn't risen to a priority or something like that? Is that what this section is?
The transportation infrastructure section.
I'm talking about your presentation versus
roll
Claire.
it all the way to, was there a heading on that one?
When
So
you
these,
start,
Right.
I'm sorry, these would be positions, so they're not necessarily things that we're trying to drive forward, but they're things that we would watch for or have a position on, so that if legislation either came up that we were opposed to it or legislation that we were supportive, we have a position on it. And we
scroll
can
the
act.
other way. I actually want to make a comment on your last one. Scroll all the way to the bottom.
So Commissioner Ulrich, these are the types.
No, you don't have to go any further. This is my point is, we've got 169, 282 project at the very bottom of a non-priority list. We got $7 million coming on a $30 million project. We need 23 million. I know the legislature doesn't like to earmark stuff or call it out, but I don't know why that would be sort of at the bottom of our non-priority list when we have no idea how we're gonna get the $23 million. I would think we'd want to put it a little higher up somewhere. That's my point.
Commissioner Ulrich, it's because it was a non-bonding year, and Claire just wanted authority if bonding opportunities came up to be able to raise that project and continue to move it forward through the local road funding source.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep, and so all of these were positions that come up at times when Claire has been down there, or as Perry will down there now, or Cindy, or Lisa, or Commissioner Beer at a Transportation Alliance, that we know what we can support or respond, even though we might not be out driving that initiative. They come up in discussion, or Mike or AMC or somebody raising them. And so just to get you to tell us your positions on these so we could respond without having to come back and we know quickly how to help support or say, no, we don't support.
Yeah.
Claire, you're muted.
They do have it as a priority for scale, and we could move this into the priority category because when we meet our legislators, we're basically going to talk about the priorities and not the positions. Those are mostly internal to help the staff know when we can go down to St. Paul and support or oppose. But if, and with the $7 million and the need to find funding a little more quickly, it's more imminent. It might not be a bad idea to move that one into the priority category.
Well, that'd be my hope.
We certainly could put it underneath the support local roads and bridges. What do you think of that? Or do you want it separate, Claire? Would the board want that on the priorities and a different location?
Well, it could go under the ones that other agencies are supporting because scale absolutely is supporting it. Or we could have it separately above that in our major priorities. It's the board's preference, I guess. But it is true, since we put this together, that $7 million was made available, so it does have more urgency now.
You know, District 1, I would support moving it up to the priorities, and I understand that Claire and Commissioner Beard and anybody who's working for us is going to have this on their mind all the time when it's appropriate, but it may be wise to just move it up on paper too.
I would concur that it's something that we want to keep bringing to especially our local legislators' attention so that they have it on their mind a lot too. We're proposing, and we'll be receiving an invitation through Outlook on Thursday, December 17th from 7:30 to 9. Some of you have a ditch meeting starting at 9 o'clock, but it's virtual, and this will be virtual too, a meeting with our legislators. I've sent out initial invitations, and I've received 4 yeses already. I just did this 2 days ago. People who would be legislators planning on attending. I'll have to pester them to make sure that they can come too. So that's when we would present these to our legislators. Our staff will be on the Zoom call as well to help explain anything that might need further explanation. Or if there's questions, we're also going to put the list out to the legislators in advance so they have a chance to look at it as well. This is replacing our traditional breakfast that we have.
Anything else on this topic?
What was our consensus on the electric car add-on? I mean, I see it both ways, so
I heard drop. I heard drop it.
Okay, I'm good with that.
So the ask would be to adopt the legislative platform. Do we need to say moving up the 169, 282, raise that, and then add the, hey, your efficiency paragraph, or not paragraph, but.
Right, with the amendments.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we adopt that, the legislative platform as presented and as amended today.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that topic?
Can I just ask a question? This amendment that you want added, does it have state programs?
I mean, for me, it's just like, it's an expectation of, it's always, there's always the ask, there's always the raise of taxes, but it just feels like we also need to set the expectation that we expect the state in all areas of its business.
Okay, the point is, this money isn't just going to the state. That's why I'm asking, does it say state programs? This money's coming to the county, this money's also going to cities, so I'm just seeing the wording of it.
Because it's, right, because it was from the scale sort of initiative of sorts.
No, it has nothing to do with scale, it's where the money goes. It doesn't just go to the state of Minnesota.
Well,
Would it help? Would it help, Leslie, if we said funded programs? Because that would mean money that would come to us or to the cities as well.
I'm struggling then, do we add this statement to every program that you have on here? Or is it just one that you're targeting?
Well, for me, the one that brought it to the top was let's raise the gas tax. It's like, well, there's always that, but there's never, well, I shouldn't say never, rarely do I see an expectation going, that one's to the state, of an expectation that, hey, make sure you guys and gals are looking under every rock. Maybe they are, I don't necessarily think so, but it's just, it's a 1-2 punch.
My point is that's not go to the state. Only 62% of it goes to the state. There is.
Oh, Leslie, we weren't going to put it, it was not my understanding that we were going to attach it to that particular priority. We were going to have this as a separate priority.
Yes.
Okay, that's what we need to understand then, so that we kept amending it to the gas tax. I wanted to make sure it clear it wasn't to that amendment, so that we understand what we're talking about.
Correct. It would be a separate priority.
All right.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, as amended, adopting 7.1 as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll look to JJ to roll call us out of 7.1.
Commissioner Weckman-Brecky,
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf,
Aye.
Commissioner Beer,
Aye.
Commissioner Beard,
Aye.
Commissioner Ulrich.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. We're going to move into item number 8, committee reports and commissioner updates. I'm still going to look to my right, my digital right, to District 1 Commissioner Weckman-Brecky.
Thank you. My report, since our last board meeting on November 18th, I attended the Academies of Shakopee Steering Committee meeting. Really heard a lot about how the different Academy champions like Scott County are still trying to interact with students, how teachers are still reaching out to folks in the community to make their curriculum better and more practical. Lisa Koner was on that call and gave some examples of things that are connections and partnerships between the county and the high school. Later that day, I had my monthly committee call for the NACO Human Services and Education Committee, some presentations there. Especially interesting was one about how more and more grandparents are raising children, raising their grandchildren, and some of the barriers, especially during COVID, that have come up with that. And then finally, later on the 18th, attended the Scott County Extension Committee meeting. On November 19th, had a Spirit of Scott committee meeting. We haven't had one almost all year, so I think probably at our next board meeting, we'll be seeing Spirit of Scott nominees and award recipients for the whole year. So look forward to that at our next board meeting. Later on the 19th, I attended the Guild Ladders of Hope virtual event. Remember, Guild is operating the ERTS facility, and they are a nonprofit, so this was their main fundraiser. Again, a challenge to do it virtually, but I think they did raise a good amount of money from individuals and organizations that want to support that cause. After that, had We Can Prevent Child Abuse and Neglect Steering Committee meeting. And then finally that day, I guess it was a day of meetings, Scott County Library Board of Trustees meeting. On November 20th, I was able to attend just a half hour of the Scott County Workforce Development Board before we moved into our board workshop. Then on the 23rd, I had a virtual meeting with the new coordinator of the We Can initiative, Haley Hedblom, and she'll be taking Heather Wilson's place. If you remember, Heather Wilson was the fellow, grant-funded fellow in our Health and Human Services Department to head this initiative. And now that Heather is done and that funding is ended, the CAP agency has taken on kind of the leadership of that initiative, housing the staff and keeping the staff person, even though a grant was received to fund it. So I think that's a good move. Not that everyone didn't love Heather in Health and Human Services, but moving it out of the county, out of government into CAP, I think is a good move. November 24th had the Scott County Mental Health Local Advisory Committee. Really was a report from the different organizations, the police departments, our mental health center, and others about how COVID is really still impacting the response, impacting the mental health crisis, impacting how we're able to help people. So a lot of good sharing and connections happened to that meeting. And then on December 1st, in the evening, there was a community advisory event for the We Can End Child Abuse and Neglect in Scott County initiative. It's been a busy month for that initiative involving, and so that community meeting involved people from the community on Zoom doing the Circles activity from the Safe Families, Lisa Welter and the Safe Families Initiative. So again, really good to see other nonprofits taking a major role in some of the work that we're usually just involved in. A couple other issues that I'd like to bring up. Something that's really impacting a lot of our residents is that last week, about a week ago, Mayo has suspended operations at the medical clinic in Belle Plaine due to staffing shortages and needing to divert staff to take care of COVID patients, things like that. So people can still do virtual visits, but that clinic is not open for appointments right now. I think Mayo did that with about 4 clinics in the area. I think it was Belle Plaine, Waterville, one of the Mankato ones. They're just not able to staff it. They still have that clinic in Belle Plaine open for COVID testing, but not for visits. Again, fully a staffing issue is my understanding. In the last couple of weeks, also had some talk with a couple constituents about our rural streetlight study. If you remember, we did get some money to look at and do some rural streetlights in, I think, 2022. But of course, the folks I talked to, their intersections did not come up high enough on the list that they're going to get street lights. So being lobbied by folks in the rural areas who really feel like we need to have more lighting on our rural intersections. And then a couple more calls about broadband. As schools have went back to distance learning, many of them, there's folks having trouble connecting. Just sent a woman, I think yesterday, to Perry, who he was able to help, whose kids were needing to go to their friends' houses to do their schoolwork because just the capacity wasn't happening and they couldn't even be at home to do their schoolwork. So there's still lots of issues and challenges, but I think we're doing our best and our staff are doing a great job trying to connect people to the appropriate resources. End of my report.
Well, thank you for that report, although I will have to say I was slightly distracted by Black Elk Peak and the Badlands over your shoulder. Made me homesick a little bit, but let's go to Commissioner Beard next.
Thank you, Chair. On the 18th, I attended the these are all virtual meetings, by the way, the MICA board meeting, and during that meeting, I stepped out back and forth a couple times, but that'll make your head spin. Trying to do 2 Zoom meetings at once, touching base with our friends over the Transportation Alliance as they talked about the upcoming transportation package. and some of the things they learned about transportation funding in the upcoming November forecast that was about to come out. On the 19th, one of my AMC duties is I'm the appointee to the governor's statewide rail task force, and we had a virtual meeting that morning that precluded something else that was going on that day. I can't recall which it was. On the 20th, of course, we had our board planning workshop on that Friday. On the 25th, Leslie and I had an early morning meeting where we had to sit and drink our own coffee and eat our own donuts while we looked at the computer screen and talked about the county and just kind of stayed in touch with each other. Then, of course, this morning, Commissioner Ulrich and I and the Scott County team, we had our transportation meeting, talk about some of the projects going on around the county and how we want to position ourselves with MnDOT and so on and so forth. And then, of course, just before this meeting, the board workshop. Mr. Chairman, that's my report.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Ulrich.
On the 18th, I attended the Transportation Advisory Board. There was a long discussion of the regional solicitation. We were in danger of getting anywhere from 0 to potentially $10 million for 169, 282. We ended up getting the $7 million. It was kind of a pitched battle back and forth there. The Met Council was obvious. They created charts and graphs and stuff to show us that everybody that if we didn't get any money, we'd be okay with over the last 6 years with our share of the regional funding. My point at that was we've never used that argument before to make it so a county didn't get a project. So we sort of carried the day there. So I told them that getting 10 million or 7 million just gives us the privilege of having to come up with 23 million or 20 million additional money, and it's really a regional project. It's a highway on 169. It's not sort of artificial to call it a Scott County project. But anyhow, we got it, so that was great. On the 19th, meeting with the mayor of Savage and the administrator and Leslie Vermillion as well. Later that day, the Suburban Transit Association nominating committee. I sort of convinced Kevin Burkhardt to step away from the ceremonial title of treasurer and make himself available for the chair of STA, and everybody went with that. And so he's now going to be the chair of STA, which he's really been doing a good job. He was really, whether it's 169 Corridor Coalition or STA, he's sort of jumped in with both feet and working hard on both organizations. Fish board meeting that same day, 11th, on the 20th, board planning workshop, the 23rd, STA legislative agenda, 24th, chair, vice chair, fish partner relations the same day, unified transit management plan that same day, and then the third, the monthly meeting with Leslie Vermillion, and then the transportation committee meeting this morning. And we're going to basically have to have a discussion on how to come up with money for these big projects. 23 million is maybe conservative. Maybe we'll need more than that for 169, 282. So the question becomes, what do we do? Do we extend the sales tax, just for that project? It'd probably be 3 years of sales tax, something like that. Or, what's our approach? So that will be an ongoing issue for us to discuss. That's the end of my report.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Got to start all over again. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the 18th, the I-35 Solutions met. Also that day, the WMO had a short meeting. And then a Belle Plaine annexation. We had a small piece of property out that way that is going to get annexed or is in that annexation area. On the 19th, Elko New Market City Council. The mosquito control also that evening. And the board planning was that morning. On the 23rd, they had met with the administrator, catch up on a few items. And then the WMO, one of the things that's come out of there is we have the funding for that McMahon Lake, and so we got to figure out how we're going to get that to work, and if they're going to create a improvement district there, what's going to happen with that, so and how that's going to be maintained throughout time. And then on the 24th, had a meeting with the supervisor at Newmarket Township. There's a drainage issue. Some trees grew up in some drain tiling, and so it's causing a little bit of a backup. Later that afternoon, the IWG met, just had a couple things come up there, nothing crazy. On the 1st, Tuesday, Spring Lake Township, Newmarket Township also met. And then on the last item is this, it's stoplight at 91 and 21 is up and going now and looks good. They did a great job there. I've got a number of nice compliments. Normally, in this job, you don't get a lot of compliments, but some people called up and said, great job, it's working great, and people that are coming in from 91 and turning right to go towards Lakeville don't have to play Russian roulette. So that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Yeah, good point on that for sure. Thank you very much. My report on the 18th, Scott County Prevention Coalition. Later that same day in the evening was extension. 19th, community corrections. I think these were all Zoom. The 19th, we had a fish board. 20th, as mentioned, our 2021 planning workshop, which I think went pretty well, everyone being on Zoom. Great conversation, great points. On the 23rd, Shakopee Chamber hosted one of their panel discussions. Mayor Mars was there, Senator Pratt, Representative Tapke. They needed a fourth to make those guys look really good, so I was the fourth. They needed a filler. So I was the filler there. Good conversations. The 24th, Chair, Vice Chair. Also that afternoon, the Intergovernmental Working Group. And one of the things we kind of talked about is solid waste management. So kind of having that conversation and just wanting to make sure there's no surprises moving forward. I have written down here the 26th. Was that Thanksgiving? Awesome. Awesome time. Ate lots of turkey. Thankful for a lot of things. Even in 2020, there's a lot to be thankful for. A lot. On the 1st, had a little impromptu monthly administrator meeting and then our workshop earlier today. And with that, we'll end my report and look to our county administrator online for a report and update.
So just two quick things here. First, Deb Brazel was not watching, but she did appreciate the birthday wishes. She's out playing with her grand dog. So just thought I'd let you know. The other thing was that the sheriff's announced they have a promotion that's going to happen in jail. Doug Schnur, a long-time jail administrator, is retiring early next year, and they have appointed Scott Redkey as the next jail administrator. And so just want to congratulate him. He has just been working with some of these data and processes we've been talking about. And so it'll be a congratulations to Doug, but also to Scott. So good news. That's the extent of my.
Is that it? All right. I gotta turn my green on. I forgot to go green here. So right now we're gonna move to item number 10, where we are going to recess for our attorney-client meeting. We're not adjourning. We are going to recess. Am I right? I'm looking to Tracy. For a closed meeting. Yep. So we're going to recess for a closed meeting. So with that, do I need to note the time? It's 4:15. We're going to be in recess.